It's been, I think, close to a year now for using the Control4 Halo remote in my entertainment spaces. I had both the non-touch and the touch, decided to keep the touch for a variety of reasons. The video about those comparisons is available from a little while back. But it's been a little bit now. I figured I'd give kind of an updated review. How's it been going? Are we still actually using it day to day? And in particular, there's been a pretty significant update. Version 1.7 is out. They have been making steady improvements to the Halo, tangible improvements both to its interface and some of its usability, which is awesome. So let's break it all down, talk about how it's working right now, what the interface enhancements are, and again, kind of an updated thought about the experience of using the remote. I do use this with an older model Control4 EA5 controller. Control4 automates essentially the entirety of my home, and we do use the remote as our main point of control for both my living room, AV entertainment space, and the dedicated home theater room. I have maintained only owning one of the touches, and we do use it between both zones. When we go to use the theater, we basically just grab it from the living room, change the room very easily that it's controlling, take it down there, and then bring it back with us when we're done. Not the handiest thing. It is kind of nice to be able to just walk into a room and grab the remote, but at the cost of one of these and for how often we use the theater, I think that's actually a pretty economical way to go about using the remote in our setup. Main control devices remain Apple TV and Kaleidoscope, and so it's been definitely a battle to replace the Siri remote. I had no real like or care for the prior Control4 Neos, and I had reverted away from using the Neos to instead using the remotes that came with my devices instead. However, I can confidently say for the several months that it's been since initially getting my hands on the Halos, they have replaced the Siri remote, the Apple TV remote directly as our Apple TV daily driver very consistently. There's only been one time where the Apple TV remote has actually come out of the drawer and it's been put back on the coffee table. It wasn't that long ago. We had a little bit of like a control system snafu and a little bit of a family misunderstanding about what remotes we're supposed to be using and how the system actually works. So the Siri remote was out for a little while, and I even kind of revisited it a little bit. I grabbed it, I used it, and I found myself kind of quickly going back to this instead. So the remote is doing its job in terms of replacing all of the other ones, all of the other types of remotes around my system that I could have a choice or have an access to use, which I think is one of the best types of recommendations that you can give to a remote control. I do think that the Halo remains as probably the best control option or one of the best certainly on the market. Yes, it is tied to a Control4 ecosystem, so to answer those questions that I usually field with the remote videos right off the bat, you cannot just buy and use these remotes on their own. You do have to use them in conjunction with a Control4 system. You can get now less expensive Control4 core controllers if you just want to use this for a specific AV entertainment theater type of space rather than a whole home automation type of purpose. That does involve buying these from a Control4 integrator and having that integrator do an initial setup of your system, your devices, your sources, your room layouts and whatnot, but then after that you can take over and do a whole plethora of intelligent, cool, tweaky type of programming within the Control4 ecosystem. And I've done a bunch of videos here on the channel specifically how I program the Halo remote for my Apple TV and the Kaleidoscope, including some interesting macros to make the Kaleidoscope do some cool things by virtue of its more advanced automation and control integration. I remain happy that I chose the touch over the non-touch. I think the size is right. The touch was too big. The number buttons really don't have any purpose, at least for the devices that I use on a daily basis. So the size, the fit, the feel in the hand of this makes it better. I live in the Midwest, kind of northern-ish Midwest. It's wintertime outside, so a lot of TV watching time, chilling on the couch time involves like wanting to kind of cuddle up, be warm under a blanket. This is the kind of remote that you can have in your hand underneath a blanket and wield, I think, fairly easily. The longer size of the non-touch makes some of those aspects a little more challenging because it is just so long. Now, one of the things that I've been looking forward to in terms of improvements for the Halo over these months has had more to do with kind of like connectivity, reliability, and particularly battery life. I think right off the bat the remote has been a significant improvement to the Neo, but still not quite delivering exactly what I might have hoped for, let's say under an ideal condition right out of the box. I would love fundamentally for a remote to be able to sit out on a coffee table for at least an entire week and perhaps go on a charger like on a Sunday night, pick it up Monday when you're ready to use the system, and then off you go and you can use the remote for the entirety of that next week. This doesn't deliver anywhere kind of near close to that, even with the relatively minimal amount of time that we actually spend in our household watching TV. Most of the time to date, I have found myself needing to charge this thing on pretty much a nightly basis, because if it sits all day long for a couple of days, by the time I would go to use it at the end of the second day, the battery life is pretty low. And particularly if we took it downstairs to watch a movie with it in the theater, it may end up kind of finishing up its battery life and not making it through that entire amount of time. So I had been charging it every night, but I'm happy to say that with the version 1.7 firmware, they specifically say that with the battery life improvements, the remote is supposed to last twice as long off the dock, which is a great step forward. So 1 day battery life times 2 immediately turns into 2 days of battery life. And I have made some other tweaks in the Control4 configuration, essentially allowing the remote to go into a deeper sleep mode earlier, part and parcel with some of the other improvements I'll mention in a second. So we are kind of happily at least at a point where this thing can sit out. It can sit out on the coffee table for a couple days. We can watch an hour or whatever, a couple hours maybe, have the television on through a couple of evenings in a row, and you can pick it up and it's going to reliably still have some battery life. We still have a ways to go before we can run a full week with it, but I'm pretty happy with improvements. They're making it better, they're stepping it forward, setting good settings, and you can actually have this thing last for a few days. Of course, the more you use it, the more time that the screen is on, that may pull some of your length of time that it's going to last back, but I'm pretty happy with the direction that it's moving for sure. The other thing that the Neo totally failed for me for was like connection stability. A lot of times you'd pick up the Neo and I would sit for a long time while it was trying to reestablish connections, get back on the network, get reconnected to the things it's supposed to command and control. The Halo from the very beginning was a step forward better than that, but I think there was still also some room for improvement, and I'm happy to say that in the firmware updates that have come, and particularly in the version 1.7, that's been a focal point of improvement as well. They actually have a 5 bullet point list in the patch notes. I love it that Control4 has a web page that gives you all the patch notes and the details about what they improved in the remote. But there's 5 bullet points related to like connectivity and Wi-Fi stability, and I have found that to be tangibly better now. Picking up the remote, seeing it connect faster, actually having an overlay on the screen now that indicates like reconnecting, and being able to do this in a more efficient way makes the time between, again, waking it up and being able to command and control something much slimmer and in many ways more reliable. I have seen the occasional kind of like restart happen, or like kind of a crash and reboot when you pick it up from a deep sleep and it tries to reconnect. The Neo did that all the time. The Halo did that sparingly. Since version 1.7, I don't believe I've seen like the crash and reboot cycle actually happen at all, which awesome. I love when companies make feature improvements and add capabilities to a device, but when devices are in need of some of the more, say, performance aspects or intangible aspects like improving the battery life and improving reliability, I'm glad that that was a focal point of what they're working on and hopefully even still continue to do more of. All right, so let's take a look actually at the remote and some of the new options and UI elements that are part of the 1.7 upgrade. All right, so with the improvements, the general overview, kind of like general operation of the remote remains the same. When you wake it up, you see an indication of what room you're in. We get a Wi-Fi and a battery indicator. We get a time and a date, 10:53, Saturday afternoon here. And we have the ability to jump directly into watching things from the current room or going to the home screen of the current room. So watch gives me a listing of all the devices that are essentially configured for the room and favorited to the room. I have my Apple TV Kaleidoscope, gaming PC, and Nintendo. If I go back home to the main screen and go into the home view of the specific room, now we see things that are favorited. The thing to keep in mind here is what you see in like this view in particular is a matter of what you have favorited to the room. And in order to favorite things to the room and set their order and control kind of their structure, you have to use the Control4 app. So you'd want to use the mobile app on a phone or a tablet. That communicates back to the system and it reflects the same way here. So I love the iconography. Basically, we get a real Apple TV icon for the Apple TV, Kaleidoscape logo, PC for a gaming PC, a Nintendo Switch looking thing, and I do have a couple of other things favorited to the room. I have a bunch of lighting scenes favorited, which take me into this lighting view. They're named according to what's set up in, again, the programming and the Control4 configuration. We'll go back. I have the ability to control my fireplace. Key still for March. We actually got a snowstorm yesterday at the very end of March here. And then the ability as well to favorite the custom button agents. Love this feature of Control4. In my living room in particular, I use the custom button agent to be able to pull up info screens, mostly for gaming, as well as kind of running a bit of a macro and a control to plop the TV in and out of game versus video modes. If I swipe to the right from here, now we have a defined list. You don't control this list. This list is populated by what is presented in the room in the configuration and the default design and UI elements of the remote. But this is where we see actually a few of the improvements that have been made with the 1.7 firmware. So part of that is now the custom button agents actually show up in this view. So you can do the favoriting and you can have access to your custom buttons here, but let's say maybe you had some custom buttons that you didn't want so directly controllable by other people or family members that may have been using the remote. Instead of putting them in the favorite list and putting them front and center, you can just have them show up here. So modes is the name of one of my custom button agents, the one for this room. And notice if I go in there, this looks exactly the same as if I go into modes from the room's home screen favorite option. So pretty cool to be able to do that. I think it actually allows you to do more with custom buttons, again, because you can use less used controls, macros, programming, and whatnot available in the room, hidden off to the side screen that you don't need access to kind of in your everyday daily driving. Okay, one of the other elements that they added in the 1.7 is the What's New page, which I love this stuff. Again, I made the whole video on it, that I love when electronics companies tell me, if you're releasing new software updates, firmware updates, you're adding capabilities, give me patch notes, give me details. I want to know what those things are. And as close as you can put those to the device that I'm using so that I can just understand that, hey, something really cool is available or a critical fix was deployed while I'm using it, right, all the better. And so if I go into a room, I swipe to the right, and I go into settings, we now have this top option called What's New. So when I first got the 1.7 firmware, right off the bat, I had a notification. I could come into What's New. There's nothing in here right now. It's just kind of telling us about the page. Actually, no, it still has the details. So I guess they didn't delete. I thought they cleared out. But the What's New page is new. You can kind of go through these. The redesigned lighting experience, we'll talk about that in a minute. Full custom button menus. So I love this. Improvements for battery life. Again, I love patch notes. I love details. I love when companies tell me about the great things that they're doing with the devices that I spent my hard-earned money to buy of theirs and use. So if we go back one more time, the other big element of the 1.7 update is the updated lighting experience. They say it enhances navigation and control by basically adding individual load elements inside the list view. And that's right here. So if we go into lighting, not only can we get to our scenes, but we see the options, the control elements that are available right now. In fact, this is my kitchen. I can tap it, turn the lights off right here, turn the lights on, use this. Very responsive, very kind of easily controllable. Love it. So the individual loads are in there. We can go to the lighting scenes. And again, this is the same view that I'm getting for the lighting scenes of the room as I got if I went through the favorite. So if, say, advanced lighting control isn't something that you regularly use, but you still want to have access to something, you can get it off of the side menu instead of having to favorite it to your main screen. And I think this makes the lighting control even better as well. That one of the things you want to think about with your Control4 configuration is if I'm in a given room, what are all of the lighting loads that I may want to control while I'm in that room? And you may want to make the tweaks and the adjustment to your system so that those loads are definitively visible across each of the rooms. For example, being in the living room, I like to be able to turn on and off the kitchen lights. Being in my theater room in the basement, I like to be able to turn off the basement stair lights and other of those elements. Most of the other interfacing remains the same. I can change rooms here very easily, and by doing so, if I control now the theater, now the list, the watch list, the favorited items and whatnot are all specific to the room that is visible or that's selected and that I'm currently actively controlling. There's another way to kind of quickly get to the watch list there, and the remainder of the settings remain the same. We can control screen brightness, and some of these were introduced actually in I think some of the later firmwares that came out from the very beginning. For example, firmware 1.5 gave us the ability to do separate screen brightness controls for the button backlights and the screen itself, which is pretty cool. So you can set kind of your levels or run the adaptive. I find the adaptive to be pretty solid. Network info, and then we can control beeping and confirmations. It makes a little chime when you put it on the dock. I like to hear that so I can specifically know that it got seated properly to charge it. Definitely don't want to end up trying to put something on a charger and then come back to realize, oh shoot, it wasn't seated properly, it didn't charge, and now it doesn't have the battery. As well as the room off confirmation. You turn the rooms off using the button there on the top. It is a harder button to press because it's kind of removed and out of the way, so it is nicely safe that you're probably not going to hit it. It's not a button you're going to hit by accident and accidentally turn the whole thing off in the middle of a movie. However, for me, I like the ability to confirm room off so that I can lock in that specific request. And then, of course, I love the button layout. A significant improvement remains over the Neos, having the full block of transport controls. Although the one thing that I wish they would have done, I think we still could have had room for a 1, 2, 3 programmable hard button here. There's enough dead space down here. We could have had one more row of buttons. I think that still would have proved to be very useful. The ability to tie a macro, tie some programming, specifically 3 different options to do so in a room to a very specific operation. But they didn't do it, and so it goes. So that is my kind of updated take, updated features and capabilities available in the Control4 Halo Touch. Again, I remain enamored with the remote. It retains its position as my daily driver, and I don't feel a need to grab other remotes or feel any kind of a need to worry about what else is available on the marketplace. I think Control4 has a really nice package. Control4 has really grown a lot, adding a lot to the brand, their offerings, their systems, as well as features and capabilities. So I think this remains, for me, absolutely highly recommended. Also really love the voice control, being able to hit it and control the Apple TV, particularly that, hey, what did they say? Kind of like verbal macro when you're watching something and you miss a piece of dialogue and it reverts back several seconds, replays that piece of content with the subtitles on, and then turns them off automatically. I think that's one of the best tweaky, like video watching features in all of home theater. And you can get it very awesomely now through the Halo with voice to an Apple TV. I will admit, voice is one of the things that I haven't explored the total domain of within my Control4 system. Definitely something I need to spend some time working on. I've talked to a variety of folks that are doing things with Apple Siri voice control in their Control4 ecosystem. I just haven't had the time to do it, but hopefully look forward to that content coming. I want to get that set up, play around with it, show how it's done, and see what type of power and capability is available with it in general, and also then potentially through the voice command control of the Halo remote itself. So if you're interested in one of these things, of course, you need a Control4 integrator. I happen to know a bunch of really awesome ones. Dan DiCarlo, one of my friends that you've seen here on the channel, and other business partners of mine, all rep, manage, integrate Control4. If you need a referral, reach out and let me know. And if you have a Control4 system and you want to take, say, some better advantage of it, you want to learn how to use Home Composer, you want to do some more advanced programming, I can do that for you, actually, myself. We can jump on a consulting call together, share the screen. I can show you some of the things that I've done in my Control4 system, teach you how to be familiar and confident using Home Composer, and introduce some cool automations and programming and capabilities into your system. If you're interested in a session like that, reach out and let me know. I welcome any support that you would like to give to the channel. Look down in the descriptions if this video helped you. Leave a super thanks, PayPal, or a Venmo tip. Shop with my affiliates. Very easy to do so with the links down there. Otherwise, please do all that regular YouTube stuff. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, share the video. Let's discuss. And come on back for more home theater and automation discussion and fun. Thanks.